Today, MuscleCar adds a new face. The LeMans gets a new finish, and Lou plays with his parts.
Welcome to MuscleCar. No, we're not having a swap meet. This is our 67 LeMans. Well, half of it anyway. Today, we're gonna paint and assemble the other half of the car. This project's been going on a long time, and it's taken a lot of work so far. We're keeping to a budget, so we saved everything we could. The frame was pulled, straightened, boxed, and painted. And the old 326 was stroked out by Butler Performance with an updated rotating assembly, intake, and carbs. Prothane came through with the bushings and stainless steel with the brakes. We modified the control arms, put in a Moser rear end, and bolted in a Richmond Super T10 4-speed. We had to replace a lot of steel and make extensive rust repairs. So Brent spent an endless amount of time prepping, undercoating, filling, and sanding. So much, in fact, there's just no way we could show it all. But he eventually gave it the Buttrey seal of approval and laid on his primer. All the body panels have been fitted and aligned, and it's ready for final blocking. Now, a lot of people would have made this a clone, but we don't want another fake GTO running around out there. This one's gonna be all LeMans. And before we undid bolt one, we came up with a budget. We estimated a matching numbers restoration at $16,500. For another $6,500, you can add a stroker kit, 4-speed, and tougher rear end. These numbers are low because we did almost all the work ourselves. In order to keep the cost down, we salvaged as much as we could. These parts are over 40 years old, but they're worth saving. Some of them are even hard to find. Window regulators are a good example. The best thing you can do is clean them up. While the regulator's dry, I'm gonna work on the window tracks. All the rust has gotta come off, and to prevent its return, a little paint does the trick. This will make a nice smooth glide for our regulator rollers. These plastic rollers are replaceable. Ours look good, so we're just gonna clean them up. If yours are damaged, you can try someone like Year One or a major restoration shop. They may be able to help you out. Lube the pivot points and gears with white lithium grease, and they should be good for another 40 years. We won't install these till the doors are painted because the window felts have to go in first. And speaking of doors, Brent found some trouble spots that needed to be taken care of. Rust in the lower door corners is a common problem. All 4 corners on the LeMans have to be patched so the doors can be painted. Once they're fixed up, a coat of primer, and they're ready for color. In order to get the last little flaws out of the body, Brent's gonna block sand it one more time. The guide coat shows any imperfections in the body. A dark area means that it's a low spot. The roof is gonna be black, which means it's gotta be flawless. So this one has to be filled. Brent's gonna keep sanding on that thing till it's perfect, which is gonna give me plenty of time to fix my pedals. Now this thing originally came with a power glide in it, which is boring. That's why we're putting a stick in it. We couldn't find pedals that were made for a LeMans, so Kiesler set us up with a set from a 66 to 67 Chevelle, with some modifications to the original brackets that work for us. Because we cut it up, it's gotta be braced or the pedals could wobble, but I've got a plan. I'm welding on a piece of 1/8" plate. That'll give it all the support it needs. The pedals fit perfect and they move well, so we're done with this for now. Oh yeah, that's a 3rd gear chirp. Woohoo! These taillight housings can be saved too. These things look like Swiss cheese. The best thing I've found to fill these smaller holes is silicon bronze. It's a man-made blend with over half a dozen elements in it. Why do I like it? It cools so quick, it doesn't fall through the holes. The edge of this housing has a lot of bigger chunks missing, so I'm patching it with sheet metal. No more Swiss cheese, so they're going into the finish pile for now. We've gotten a lot of small but important things taken care of. It's time for the LeMans to go in the paint booth, and it's not coming out till it gets some custom colors. After the break, it's time for prime.
Who let this guy into the MuscleCar studio? And why is Lou so hard at work? Find out after the break.
We're back! We've saved a few parts off the 67 LeMans that could have ended up in the scrap heap. Fixed a few trouble spots on the body and sent it into the paint booth. I stuck around long enough to help Brent mask it up, then cut them loose on the primer. The next step in this process is wet sanding. I'm no body guy, so I want nothing to do with it. And I'm tired of waiting for Brent to get this thing done by himself, so I got him some help. Remember this guy? It's Rick Bacon. He's the guy who did the killer flame job on the 63 Impala Pro Mod. He can set just about anything on fire. With paint, that is. Rick's joining the MuscleCar crew as of today. What's up, man?
Same old, another beautiful day in paradise.
Cool.
How you doing?
I'm peachy, man.
Wonderful. Hey, I've been watching the show. You guys have been working Brett to the bone, dude.
That's the way I roll, man. I don't do body work, so someone's got to suffer.
Well, that's what I'm here for. I'm going to come in and give him a hand.
Cool. Not only can Rick lay down some wicked flames, he's got other skills as well. Pinstriping, candy apple, pearl, two-tones, graphics, and sometimes all of this on the same car. He's got a creative flair, especially when the project speaks to him.
Now, the foundation for any show-quality paint job is all in the prep work. Now, Brent's already done most of it for us, but I'm going to give him a hand with the wet sanding.
I'll see you later. I'm busy.
Hey, Brett, oh, there you are, man.
What's going on, dude?
Hey, another beautiful day, man. So where are we at on this thing?
We like this a little wet sanding.
A little wet sand? All right, well, I'm here to give you a hand with it. This thing looks pretty good. Got a little low spot right above the wheel well over here.
Honestly, I've only done 2 cars my whole life.
Oh, seriously?
Yeah.
No, you sure? Sure, tease the new guy. So where do you think Lou is right now?
It's probably lollygagging with a magazine. Man, it seems like we're the only ones working. We'll take a break.
You gotta ask me twice.
Let's go, baby!
Come on, Flash. We in hot pursuit.
Hey, Brett, you know what you call a bald guy? Bald guy with long hair in the back?
No
It ain't a mullet, man, it's a skullet.
Dude, we should probably get back to work. Yeah.
Once the wet sanding is done and the residue is cleaned off, anything not getting painted is masked off. Brent's laying down a sealer first. It gives an even foundation for the base coat. Now finally, after dozens and dozens of hours spent on prep, it's time for paint. Auto Body Color and Supply mixed some custom colors just for our LeMans. The Buttrey Black goes on the roof first. Now since the rest of the car is going to be a different color, the black gets masked off. This baby is going to be worth its weight in Santiago gold.
This is something a chief would be proud of. This project's on the home stretch, so it's time to take it for a ride on the lift to get the plumbing knocked out. The fuel tank is coming out of our big pile of parts, and it's a stock replacement, so it bolts right in. I forgot to order the sending unit, but that's okay, it's on the way. I installed a bulkhead fitting on the bottom of the tank to hook our 1/2-inch line to. This way, we don't have to modify the sending unit to accommodate the bigger fuel line, not to mention our gauge will still work. The line is clamped to the frame rail and attached to the fuel pump. I'm lowering the car and unwrapping the engine so I can get to the carbs. One last line and it's done. For the brakes, I've mounted a T in the engine compartment to feed the front. The proportioning valve and master cylinder will go on later. While I finish these front lines, Rick's turning his attention to the remaining body panels. They need the same treatment as the rest of the body, and that means more prep work. Once Rick's worked his magic, Brent gives him a shot of primer. A few more panels, and we'll be golden. The brakes on our LeMans are almost done. Now after the break, we're gonna show you another LeMans that came to a screeching stop before it started rolling. Flashback, when we come back.
Today's MuscleCar Flashback, a rare 77 Pontiac CanAm.
Some of you muscle car fanatics may argue that Pontiac had the first muscle car. The GTO first hit the streets in 1964. 348 horsepower and 389 cubic inches meant that each pony was only pulling about 10 pounds of car. The legacy continued in 1969 when the Judge was born. It was stylish, had a high displacement engine, and a nice tuned suspension. Pontiac was definitely on a roll. In 1977, they gave it another shot and rolled out the Can-Am, promising it would be the new GOAT. Originally, 5,000 LeMans were slated to be converted into Can-Ams, but only about 1,300 were ever made due to a broken spoiler mold. Complete with a Turbo 400, tuned-up suspension, ducktail spoiler, and a shaker hood, it looked as if this rare production would go down in muscle car history. A set of stripes, rally wheels painted to match, blacked out grille, and louvered quarter windows gave this car a ton of muscle car style and appeal. The sporty package had a massive 6.6-liter motor, a great starting point for any muscle car, but on the Can-Am, this is where all that muscle came to a grinding halt. The 400 cubic inches were strangled back by EPA regulations, along with rising insurance and fuel costs to a mere 200 horsepower. But that's cool with Mike Cunningham. Due to the low production number and lack of interest in 70s cars, there are only about 200 of these still known to exist. And Mike, well, he digs on 70s cars, and this one still turns a lot of heads.
Once they see what the car's all about, then the interest picks up.
Mike snagged this car a few years back for under 20 grand, and it was in stellar condition. This is an all-original, unrestored Can-Am, and it is immaculate. Not to mention, it only has 29,000 miles on the clock. Compared to performance cars today, yeah, this car is pretty much a slug, but you gotta remember that in 1977, the Corvette only had 170 horsepower, and even the Camaro Z28, well, it only had 180, so the 200 horsepower Can-Am was a beast, relatively speaking.
In 1977, it was one of the top dogs out there.
Now, a lot of you hardcore 93 octane burning purists may think that if it doesn't have 400 horsepower, then it's not a real muscle car. But you gotta keep an open mind to a car like this. It's stylish, rare, and has the potential for some serious upgrades. And with 60s cars getting harder to find and even harder to afford, cars like this are an ideal platform for a resto mod. All they need is a little muscle. Stick around, we're back on our LeMans right after the break.
Now back to Lou and Rick, the new guy, at his first day on the job.
Hey, welcome back. Today we're working underneath our 67 LeMans. The fuel tank and the lines are in, and right now we're plumbing the brakes. A rigid line runs from each rear caliper to a T-fitting. A piece of flex line allows for movement of the rear suspension. One more fitting connects it to the front half of the system. The rear brake line mounts to the frame rail alongside the fuel line. Once the master cylinder is in, we'll make the final connections.
These manifolds from Ram Air Restoration are recasting of the legendary Pontiac Ram Air 4 headers. You can tell just by looking at them. They'll flow better than stock.
But because they're bigger, we got some clearance issues. Now we can't put them in from the bottom because of the scatter shield. So what we're going to do is raise the motor up just enough to get them in from the top.
Tell me when.
We only need to come up a couple inches for these to slide into place. And here's something you're not going to see in a stock restoration. It's a gear vendor's unit. Now this not only adds an overdrive, which is going to give you better gas mileage, but it also allows you to split all the gears, which is going to make shifting that 4-speed a whole lot more fun.
We're putting it in before the exhaust to make sure there's plenty of room. The old housing is out of there, so's the speedo gear.
So why use an under overdrive unit? Well, you can split second, third, and fourth, turning your 4-speed into a 7-speed. With the smaller RPM drop between gears, you'll have less power loss and better gas mileage.
The first piece of the new tail shaft housing slides on and bolts into place. I'm test fitting the second piece to mark the floor pan. I expected to have to make some room here, but because this is an aftermarket floor pan, I ended up having to cut it. Some finessing of the shaft and it slides into place. Since we're using big ram air manifolds, these 2.5-inch downpipes and exhaust are no problem. This kit from Magnaflow would bolt right in if it was a standard application, but we're using a gear vendors, so we're no longer standard. The drive shaft needs more room than we've got, so it's time for some modifications, and I can make it work. The X-pipe marks the spot. Close enough anyway. Then the coleslaw slices through these just like butter. Oh, check that out. Two cuts. Two cuts are better than one. Fitting the pieces of the exhaust can be tricky, so I've tacked in most of them to make sure it fits. Now that it's all lined up, I can weld it back to the mufflers.
While Lou's been over there getting his exhaust flowing, me and Brent have been in here prepping out the fenders and the hood. The wet sanding's all done and it's ready to get drenched in some more of that Santiago gold. Now I could hang out over here and watch him paint, but I think I'm gonna cruise over and see how old Lou's doing.
Rick, great timing. Give me a hand pushing this thing. We've gotten a lot done on the LeMans today, but we still have a long way to go. We did get it painted and plumbed, but we still need to take care of the wiring, the AC, interior, and the rest of the body needs to find its home. If all goes well, this baby will be ready for the road, and we'll take you for a ride later.